to our 80 acres on the Cedar River. We joined Practical Farmers of Iowa. We joined Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. I was a union organizer, and I was turning into a tree hugger. I was learning how to grow food for the first time in my life. I grew up out east, where you can't grow anything more than cows, because everything else is rock. And we reconnected with some old friends. I'd been here in the 80s. I'd been through that farm crisis with people, and I tried to help. Paul had been here into the 90s. He wrote a book predicting what CAFOs would do to our countryside. But after all that time away, we came back, and we saw CAFOs were now everywhere. Confined animal feeding operations, for those who don't know, were now everywhere. And the power to regulate them had moved, for those of you who don't know, from the county to the state. Industrial farm giants had their names plastered on ball fields and parks everywhere. We could go miles without seeing a farmhouse. Small towns were closing up shop at about the same alarming rate they had been. Young people wanted to grow healthy food, but they couldn't afford the land. Older folks were stressing out about transferring their land to the next generation. Farmers markets were more popular than ever, but how long was that going to last when the farmers had to drive farther and farther to get to the market because they couldn't afford the land around town? But there was good news too. We looked around the landscape and we saw Denise O'Brien had founded Women Food and Ag Network. Thank you, Denise. It was growing Practical Farmers of Iowa into its adulthood. The Iowa Environmental Council and the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation have become something of the elder statesmen in Iowa of environmental work, right? And the Iowa CCI was still out there, more rambunctious than ever, still rabble-rousing like kids, right? Making everybody else look tame. Even the Iowa Farmers Union was still kicking, the oldest man in the room, or woman, going on 100 years this year, celebrating next week. So we got something to work with here. People are tired, but we're just coming back. We're kind of fresh. We can go in for the second part of the game. Paul and I looked around and we thought, what can we do to make a difference in this landscape? We had a small windfall from a house that we sold in Pennsylvania when we moved back. We thought, okay, we could buy a small farm, a 10,000 acre. It would be a small farm for a beginning farmer. We learned this from PFI. And he'd pay us back as soon as his business was up and running and he could get the credit together. And basically it was an interest-free down payment. Well, we went to an auction. And as hard as we promised ourselves, we overdid it. We bought a much bigger farm. We went into a lot of debt. And we're still learning from that experience every day. But you know what? It has helped us. It's complicated, but it has helped us appreciate how incredibly complicated, difficult, and expensive this whole effort is. I mean, we may not be 100-year century farmers from Iowa, but we've had a pretty quick learning curve, pretty steep learning curve here trying to do this.